Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of Creative Dynamos. Today, I am interviewing author Dorian Sinnott. Dorian, I hope I got your last name right.
You did, yes.
Awesome. As a person whose last name has been pronounced all manner of ways, I try and get that right as often as I can. So you and I have known each other for a while through the wonder of TikTok. But before we get into the meat of our discussion, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? How long have you been writing? What genres do you write in? That kind of thing.
All right. So I have been writing a very long time, probably since I was a very young child. I started taking it more seriously, like towards the end of high school and like when I started going to college and taking writing courses. But I think I first started writing, liking writing, what in kindergarten. We used to do these workshops on Fridays where we would get index cards and basically draw little stories and have story time and share them. And I just like really loved that. And from there, I've always been telling stories since I was a little kid. Yeah, and mostly what I write is like dark fiction. I write poetry here and there as well. That's not dark stuff though. It's lighter, it's sad, it's that kind of stuff. But dark fiction and horror is typically what I write.
It's funny that you should say that. And pardon me, I'm gonna get on my phone here for a second because, and I did tell you about this in the prep, just because I didn't realize it was going to be pertinent. But one of the books that I am reading this month, and it's a reread for me, is The October Country by Ray
Hmm.
Bradbury. And he talks about being a writer from a very young age. And he talks about how all of these influences from seeing The Hunchback of Notre Dame and in the movie, the silent film, I think it was a silent film. If not, it was a very early talk. And being exposed to all of this, that he had a lot of deaths in his family at a very young age too, how all of this kind of turned him into the writer that he became. And he says, the October country is that country whose people are autumn people, thinking only autumn thoughts, whose people passing at night on the empty walks sound like rain. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that you and I are autumn people.
Definitely.
We live in the October country. And that's why I'm so glad that we could schedule this. I'm going to try and drop this on Halloween because I think that would be appropriate. I read, and I don't get to do this with every writer that I interview, but I happen to have read Along About Midnight. Is that your first book that you've published?
No, that's my second one.
Okay. So I read Along About Midnight and I went back and read my review today just to freshen it up in my mind. And it is a very somber, very dark work of fiction. And I really resonated. It really resonated with me. The main characters struggle with depression and anxiety, and that was very impactful to me. Talk to me about the process of writing a character like that. And is that something that you yourself struggle with, or how did you just make that feel so real and carry so much weight?
I do struggle a little bit with anxiety, not horrendously, but here and there. I know some of my friends growing up, they had really bad anxiety and depression. So I took a lot of his character from what I experienced with people growing up in high school. But honestly, writing it, it was very hard to write. And it took a really long time to get some of those scenes out. And honestly, I had to put myself in a very dark place when I wrote some of them.
Mhm.
And I feel like I made myself extremely depressed that I was going through really bad depression and anxiety from writing that while I was writing it. So it was very difficult, but I think it paid off in the end.
I agree. I said in the review that I had to take some brain breaks, not because it wasn't beautifully written or that I had any problem with the prose, but exactly the opposite, because it was powerful and because it took the circumstances that the characters were in took them to some very dark places that I had to go watch some puppies play and do some happy thoughts. So, what inspires you to write dark fiction?
Honestly, I don't know.
Fair.
It's just what I'm like drawn to. A lot of my inspiration for writing comes from music, and I'm big into like metal music and stuff like that, where it deals with darker themes, but yeah. But I don't know, like hopeful dark, if that makes sense.
That's
Yeah. So I think a lot of it just comes from my interests in darker stuff and
just
life, and I don't
flows
know,
out of that.
life isn't all happy anyway. So,
What are some of your
but
favorite bands? I'm putting you on the spot here.
gosh, I have so many. I like more metalcore. They're like kind of my big thing. Bring Me the Horizon, Ice Nine Kills, Motionless in White, Bad Omens. I like older metal too, like Metallica, Slayer, all that stuff.
Now you're talking my language. I'm
Yeah.
head. My kids, especially my youngest, is very much is into some of that darker metal, and I had them build me a playlist so that I could get a sense of what they were listening to. Because I like to expose myself to new music as often as possible. That's just a passion that I have. And I was so proud when they put some Metallica on there. I was like, you didn't have to do that for me. And they were like, no, that's like legitimately what I listen to. So I was like, I think I raised you right. So are you one of those writers that like listens to listens to music while you write, or do you write it in quiet?
I do. I actually can't write in quiet. Like I think that silence is deafening in a way. Like it just overpowers my thoughts. But I can't listen to music with lyrics when I write. So a lot of what I listen to is like more ambient stuff. Some of the like composers I listen to are like Peter Gundry, Adrian von Ziegler, where they have very, I'm gonna say like emotional ambient stuff. So you can pick if you want dark, if you want emotional, depressing, like mood music basically.
Like,
And then when I'm brainstorming, I listen to stuff with music, like lyrics, music with lyrics. But when I'm writing, I can't have lyrics and I can't have sounds.
so how do you brainstorm? What's that process look like?
Honestly, most of it is like just going for drives in the
Okay.
car and having music on and just, I don't know, just thinking about stuff while it's on. And sometimes it's like just little lines and songs spark other lines or other thoughts. And that's where I build things from.
Do you take notes, or are you one of those people who's blessed with the ability to remember these little snippets and gems as you're driving along?
I think it depends. Most of the time I can remember a lot of it, but certain things I will take notes for.
I don't know what I would do without my smartphone and the ability to put stuff into Google Docs. When I get the really juicy ones, they're really like, I remember a few weeks ago, I'm in the process of writing my first high fantasy work. And I got this idea, and it was literally 1:30 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. And I had this idea, and I was like, that's brilliant. I love it. And so I flipped open my phone and put it into the Google Doc because there was no way I was going to remember it the next day. Absolutely wasn't going to happen. Okay, so you've lit the candles, you've turned on the music, you've got your notes ready, and you're writing. Are you the kind of person that writes one thing at a time, or are you working on multiple projects at once?
I typically only write one thing at a time. Like I'll have like short stories and stuff like that I'll work on, but like novel length, I'm dedicated to just one thing because I'm like I feel like if I hop around, I'm never gonna get anything done because yeah, I have to be devoted to one thing.
I'm so ADD. I am always working on multiple things, be they short stories or longer works. I would probably have a lot more finished things if I did what you do, but my brain doesn't work that way. So I admire people that are able to forge ahead on one thing and get it done and move on to the next thing. Speaking of the next thing, you've got a work in progress that is a sequel, not a
Well,
sequel,
but
yeah, but
it
connected.
builds with the same. Yeah.
So tell me about it.
So it's funny because when I started doing Along About Midnight, like I was following like very Halloween trope. I knew exactly where I wanted to go. I had everything laid out. And I'm gonna say about three-fourths of the way through the book, like I feel like the characters took over. And I was like, okay, this is not going where I wanted it to go, and there's so much more I want to do with them. But I was like, I can't sacrifice what I started to veer off into that direction because it would just be crazy. So I talked to some readers because I'm like, I don't know if anybody's done this. I don't know how crazy it is, but I'm using the same characters from that in new book. It's a completely different genre. It takes place entirely in reality, but there are the exact characters that I needed to tell the story that started to come out while I was doing that. And again, it's very grief based. It's very like dealing with guilt and coping and stuff. But I think it's more real world centered. And yeah, I don't know. I'm enjoying it.
So it has the same some of the same characters from Along About Midnight.
Yeah.
But it's a different genre, different scenario, different story. Okay. So does it deal at all with the events of Along About Midnight, or is it just
No, it does not.
it's just a completely different, like
Yeah.
alternate reality almost?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's kind of there. Stephen King wrote The Regulators and
Is it Desperation?
Desperation.
Yeah.
That did something similar-ish with using the same characters in some ways, but in a completely different situation. So that's cool. I like that. I like that a lot. So what genre does it fall into? If this is like supernatural horror Along About Midnight, where is this next taking us?
I would say it's still dark fiction because it deals with dark themes like with grief and guilt, like I said, stuff like that. But I don't think it's really horror. At first I classified it as that, but I'm like, there really isn't horror happening. It's very like coming of age type. So right now I'm just calling it like a dark coming of age story, maybe like thriller-esque, but
Maybe
not really
literary
horror.
fiction, thriller.
Yeah, it's more like literary. I would say more like just dark literary fiction.
Okay. That's
It's
cool.
very different for me. So
I respect that. I like to write in different genres. So yeah, that can be a challenge. What are some of the challenges you're facing in branching out to a new genre?
I think the biggest thing with this has been just like keeping it completely in reality without all that supernatural, because I love adding aspects of like folklore or just like here and there having some supernatural stuff or some fantastical stuff. But like this, because it's everyday life, like could happen to anybody, and not having any of that, I find it just hard because I'm like, I'm always wanting to tap into, oh, I want to just can we just make something happen?
Can we have a ghost in this scene?
Right?
And can we have a vampire over here? Yeah, I have run into that myself. I have a few things that I've played around with in the more slice of life kind of thing, and I so want to throw a demon or something
Oh, yeah.
into the mix to spice things up. But yeah, that can be tough. That can be tough. You write short stories too, you said?
Yes, I do.
What do you do with those short stories? Do you write them for anthologies or?
A lot of times for anthologies, yeah. A lot of times I'll write for 4 calls. There's an anthology open. Sometimes I just do them myself if I have a story that comes to mind that isn't novel length. But most of them, yeah, I send them out to anthologies.
So is writing what pays the bills for you, or is this?
I wish.
Oh, no.
It's a nice check here and there for groceries for the week, but it's pretty much.
So one of the things that I like to talk about with my creative dynamos is the struggles that they face with trying to create while having to pay the bills and deal with the current shitstorm that we're dealing with in this country, which I think you and I agree on. So what are some of the challenges as a creator that you face outside of necessarily just the act of creating itself, and how have you overcome?
I think a lot of it comes down to this interferes with creating is just time, because having to work and everything and having to have a 9 to 5 job, finding time in the day where you're not exhausted, where you want to just sit down and write. And honestly, the worst part is it's like when I'm working, that's when all the ideas are coming. And then as soon as I clock out for the day, it's done. So I've been getting up earlier. I do a lot of the 5 a.m. writing stuff, like before I go into work, but my brain works better in the morning anymore. I used to not. I used to be a night owl, not anymore.
God bless you. I'm like, I can't function before the sun comes up. So I'm the kind that plugs away. Like I'll have my laptop sitting in my lap while my wife is crocheting or listening to her audiobook or whatever. I have trained my brain to deal with like distractions. And I think part of that might be my ADD. It's okay if I'm stimulated. I can create even if the TV's on or something else, as long as it's not something I'm interested in. And I can go ahead and write through that kind of haze. So yeah, but yeah,
Honestly, I think the other thing is just like the cost. It's so expensive to like order books. Like the cost of paper has gone up, like print costs, even for if you're doing things yourself and you're reaching out to like editors and artists and stuff, they have to pay their bills too. So it's very pricey.
I didn't check and I couldn't remember, but you're doing this all on your own. You're an indie
For my novels, yeah.
for your novels. Yeah.
Yeah.
What made you decide to take that route?
I so I worked in publishing for a little while.
Okay.
And honestly, I think seeing like the traditional side, working at a literary agency and stuff, turned me off from it. Seeing how things were run, but also I like I'm big with art. I'm big with stuff like that, and I like having control over how I want things to look and be presented. So I like hiring out my own cover artists. I like hiring my own like internal art if I have internal art in books. Those people, and just at the end of the day, like having something that I'm proud of instead of having a team of people make something that I don't know, maybe not reflect the vision that I had.
Definitely. Yeah, I was just talking with a friend of mine who is working with a small publisher who shall remain nameless because I don't want to slander anybody on my podcast. But yeah, they're really not treating him very well in terms of giving him the covers that he wants and the quality of the covers and things like that. They're mill, so they're just churning out stuff. And so he said if he realized that's how it was going to be, like he's an indie for the most part, but he decided he would work with this company and see how it went, and he's regretting it, I think. So yeah, I'm the same as you. I've been in this indie publishing mode for about 17 years, off and on, and through podcasting my stuff and books and ebooks and a variety of other things. And it's just nice to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it with the artists that I love to work with. Yeah, it means I have to take some lumps if it's not perfect, but I own those lumps. It's a learning process. That just means the next thing I'm going to work harder on and learn lessons learned. So I admire writers like you who come out the gate with some great stuff because there's so much. It's not easier. I'm not going to say that because it's not easy. I don't want to give that impression to anybody. This is hard work, what we're doing. There are so many more tools. Let me put it that way. And there are so many more great artists out there and so many more great editors out there. You've got access to such a great community. And as long as you tap into that, you can turn out some really solid stuff. The worst thing you can do is try and do it all on your own. And I think that as long as if you're somebody who's just getting started in this, like you haven't put out your first thing yet, pay attention to people like Dorian, people like me, people who have put out some solid stuff, ask questions and try and avoid some of the mistakes that have been made. But there's no saying that there aren't some great small publishers out there. And at some point, I'm probably going to try and find a good one and just see how the other side lives.
That's what I'm trying to do with this next project is I think I want to query it out to some smaller presses, that ones that I know of and know are good and work with their authors and everything, just to experience that a little bit. But
so you and I are both LGBTQ, somewhere on that spectrum, the Rainbow Mafia, as I like to call it. What's it like as a queer creator? I'm not sure what label you personally use, but
I usually use queer, so that works.
What's
It encompasses all.
What's it like as a queer creator for you? How has that affected your journey?
Honestly, I think that the community in like the writing and even the reader community is really big with queer fiction, especially in horror. Because horror, I feel like at its base, there are many queer elements to it. And there's so many panels and like things people have talked about before about this. But honestly, I think it's opened a lot of connections I've had with people. So it's been positive in my opinion.
It's awesome. That's great. There's so many great, like, queer creators, whether they're artists, authors. I don't know what it is about the experience. I personally didn't come to grips with my own sexuality until I was into my late 30s, early 40s. But there's just something about, I think there's something about the experience of you know what I don't even know what I'm trying to say. The being marginalized and the pain and the frustration and the struggle that can cause, and being able to process that through your art. And I'm probably one of the most privileged people that you'll ever meet on so many levels, but still there as somebody who's disabled and has a ton of things that I struggle with, I'm coming to terms with the fact that there are privileges I don't have access to, and being able to use your art to process through those emotions, and that can take you to some pretty dark places. And for me, like, one of the most powerful things that I ever wrote that kind of makes me identify with what you were talking about, having to take breaks during writing all along about midnight. I was a short story about a father who has an autistic son, and I have all three of my children are autistic, and I had to take a couple of writing breaks from writing that story because of the emotional impact it had on me. But using that writing process to process those emotions as the father of an autistic child, as an autistic person myself, was powerful. And that's why I try and tell creators, put all that stuff on the page. Like,
Absolutely.
be open and honest with who you are and what your struggles are through your art. And I'm not saying that, I'm sure there are people that stop themselves from doing that block their flow from, and I'm like, yeah, just let it out. Let it out. Have a good editor.
Oh, it's like you don't know who you'll reach or connect with or other people that you'll help or
And that was, you and I are right here, because that's exactly what I was going to say next. You're going to have somebody out there is going to read what you've written, or they're going to see what you've painted, or what the movie that you created, whatever your creativity is, and it's going to hit them right where they need it, and you're going to help them process their own emotions and their own experiences. I was watching a great video on the movie Sinners recently. If you haven't seen it,
it's fantastic.
why?
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, if you have, as a horror fan, if you haven't seen it, why haven't you seen it? But I didn't get to see it in the theaters, but I'll send you a link to the video. It was amazing. But one of the things that the creator talked about was the experience of being Black and being a creator. And it talked a lot about Coogler and how he had to be careful about what he said about the film. And I can't understand any of that, because I don't have that experience. But the creator who's making the video is Blunt. And he was like, just so obviously impacted by what Coogler was doing with that movie. But one of the things that he said while making the video was that he would love to do some commentary on the Irish component of the film, but he's not Irish, so he can't really comment on that because he doesn't have that experience. And that just really impacted me, because I am of Irish descent, and I wish I was as eloquent as this guy is. I would make a Howard documentary on that aspect of the film, but I don't have the language. But yeah, wherever you're at, like, whatever your journey is, that needs to be part of your art. And I feel like that's part of what I'm trying to do here, is have creators like you talk about your process, talk about who you are, what you are, your identity, and the fact that all of this is coming out of you onto your project. And somebody's going to see this video and think, I'm queer. This guy's out there doing it. I need to be out there doing it. We want to inspire people to create and to incorporate their experience into that creation. Wow. Sorry for the monologue.
Oh, you are good.
We went on a little bit of a tear there. Bring this back to you, my guest. So I am a slow, fast writer. When I write fast, but because of some health issues, mental and physical, there are breaks where I can't write because I just don't have the spoons to do. So what's your speed?
It really depends on the project. There are some things, if it's like there and it's nagging me, I will be quick. I'll get it done. Like I will devote everything to it. And then there's other things that it could take me months at a time where I'll have to just walk away from it for a few months to either clear my mind or my motivation's just not there. That's where I was over the summer. I think it was just a lot of the state of the world. I think a lot of people, my artist friends said the same thing. They didn't draw for months because they were like, they didn't have the energy, the motivation. So it just depends. So
I get that. I get that. I want to get the message out there that, man, this is the time. Like we need more than ever before. We need to be creating stuff and putting stuff out there. But I get it. No, I absolutely get it. Like it's tough to what in the world difference does me selling a book mean? What in the world difference does me writing the next book mean? It means a lot, dude. You need to write the next book. You need to paint the next painting. You need to make the next movie. We need creativity expressed. And some of the most beautiful art comes out of some of the most nightmarish times. And I understand this as somebody who creates dark fiction, but some people are going to be watching this and they're going to be thinking, wow, why should I read something so dark when the times are already so dark? Blah, blah, blah. But no, that's for me, sometimes when the world is dark, it's a weird it's like I'm ADD. I take speed. That makes sense. Prescription, legitimately prescribed medication. But sometimes when you're in a dark place, there's something about reading horror, reading dark fiction. It helps me be in a better headspace. I can't explain it, but it makes sense.
I'm the same way. I feel like when things are crummy in the world, that's just where I want to be, is watching horror movies, reading horror books. Yeah. Can't explain it, but
before we close here, I like to ask people, I know you're a young guy, but if you could go back to your younger self, before you started putting out your works for people to consume and appreciate, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what advice would you give yourself?
Man.
Nothing?
Probably something. I'm just trying to think what it would be. I think if anything for my younger self, because when I was first starting out, and I think this is the way it is for everybody, is rejection is not easy to take if you're new. But once you've been in the game a while, it's part of it. It's just what happens. So I think what I would tell my younger self is to not worry and get hung up so much about rejections. Because to me, at this point, what I always tell everybody is rejection is just basically opportunity. That wasn't the right place for your work, and your work will find the right home. So if you get a rejection, don't look at it as your work is bad. Look at it at that was not the right place for you. So I always see rejection as a positive, not as a negative. So I think that's what I would try and instill in my younger self back when rejection felt like horrible.
That's an old. Yeah, yeah, I agree 100%. In fact, I think if there's any drawback to what we do by being indies, it's we don't go through the same process that the many traditionally published authors who we stand on the shoulders of went through. We don't go through the constant rejection. I think of Stephen King, who like wallpapers its writing space with all of his many rejections. That's one of the things that I appreciate about the fact. Like I've never pitched any of my novels, but I have sent many short stories to many publishers, and I've gotten many rejections. So I think that is a good experience that can help you, as long as you don't don't let it make you decide to stop creating. Like
Exactly.
use it as fuel to keep going. And we will get those 1-star reviews. We will get those 2-star reviews. That's a different form of rejection in its own right. Don't let that stop you from creating. So absolutely, I agree. It's
My whole thing too with the 1 and 2-star reviews, which I would also tell my younger self, is that when you start getting 1 and 2-star reviews, you're starting to reach people outside your circle. So me, I'm like, that's a plus. So
a good way of looking at it. That's a good way of looking at it. I agree. Dorian, I want to thank you for your time. Tell people where we can find you.
I'm basically everywhere. If you Google my name, I will have my website. I'm on Instagram.
And you've got one of those great names. There's no other Dorian Jinx.
There's no other one now.
I think
If you Google that, you're gonna get it all.
I interviewed this woman, Carolyn Atlantis. There's no other Carolyn Atlantis out there. Like there are other Scott Roaches out there. I know that's hard to believe, but yeah. So I will make sure that we have links to all your stuff. And thank you for your time. And have a happy Halloween.
You too.